All right, we're calling the meeting to order. I'm assuming the agenda was posted by the Torrance City Clerk and all is well there?
Yes, all is well there.
Okay, first order of business, Jackie, the Brown Act declaration.
Yes, and we have, pursuant to 361, AB 361, the board finds that the state of emergency remains in force and state officials continue to recommend measures to promote social distancing. So this meeting will be conducted virtually. We have an attachment on page 5 of your agenda where we're recommending that you approve that, and that would be good for all of the meetings of the COG for the next 30 days.
Excellent. All right, would someone that's read that like to make a motion to approve?
So moved.
Thank you, Councilmember Horvath.
I'll second that.
Thank you, John. Councilmember Cruikshank. All right. How do you want to do the vote, David?
Do a reverse roll call. Any opposition? Any abstentions? Okay, thank you.
Great. And then Jackie, in terms of changes to the agenda, I know we're moving up a speaker. Are there any other changes?
No, we're just changing the order of our speakers. Mayor Brand has to be at another obligation, so he's going to go first. And the health department has agreed to go as our third presentation. Okay,
great. Any comments from the public? Any speakers on? Dave?
No public comments.
I do not have any.
No. Okay, we're on to consent. Are there any polls from the consent calendar? No, great. Someone like to make a motion to approve the consent calendar?
I so move.
Second.
Okay, that was Huff and Gaisley, correct?
Yes.
Excellent,
yes.
Thank you. All right, David.
Okay, Huff is, Steve Zuckerman is here, but that's okay with Steve. Steve is the delegate and Britt is the alternate. Yeah, okay.
Okay, thanks for clarifying. All right, Dave.
Any opposition? Any abstentions? Okay, thank you.
Okay, moving along. We're on to presentations, right, Jackie?
Yes.
All right, so first up, Redondo Beach Mayor Bill Brand. Bill, great to have you. We all appreciate all your efforts for SB 9, SB 10, and all the other crazy housing bills coming out of Sacramento and your latest constitutional amendment initiative. So we'll turn it over to you, Bill.
Great. Thank you, Drew. It's great to see everybody. And thanks for moving me on the agenda after this. There's a Culver City Town Hall with over 200 people already signed up. So I double booked myself. Anyway, can I go ahead and share my screen?
Can you share it? Is Natalie, are you sharing it?
How's that?
Okay, perfect.
Did it. Yep. Great. So what am I here to talk about? It's called our Neighborhood Voices Initiative. That's going to be the common name of the initiative. And some of you heard about it. It's a constitutional amendment to make zoning and land use community affairs. So I'll go through it quickly and take questions. Some of you know about it, but the fundamental question that many have to ask themselves in the final analysis, and gets very complex and gets in the weeds about a lot of different issues, and people argue about this and that, but the fundamental question that it always comes back to, who do you think is better suited to set zoning and land use regulations for your town? The legislature in Sacramento, in most cases far away legislators, or your local cities and counties who are represented by people who live where you live? So that is ultimately the fundamental question after all the give and take and back and forth. And of course, as most of you know, Sacramento has declared it's the city's fault. A housing shortage, affordability crisis, however you see it, it's the city's fault. And they determined that several years ago. And as a result, they're scapegoating cities instead of collaborating on affordable housing. I've been up in Sacramento a lot the last few years and trying to collaborate and get some affordable housing in some of these. And as most of you know, SB 9 and many other bills have no affordable housing requirements. It's all market rate. And the housing shortage, of course, is caused by our local regulations. Somehow there's a bunch of bad actors out there who are denying projects. And the fact is, over 90% of the cities have certified housing elements. And I've talked to a lot of local elected officials up and down the state. I haven't really heard of any cities that are blocking projects or don't want affordable housing. Almost everyone I talk to is working to get more affordable housing. I'm sure there's some bad actors out there, but none of them have really been identified. Supply versus demand, that's their mantra up there. It's not a natural law, like water boils at 212 degrees. It's an economic theory that usually works. And it doesn't work, though, for residential development. Just look at San Francisco. It's the most densely populated area in California. It's also the most expensive. If density were the answer to bring prices down, San Francisco would not be the most expensive. And in fact, as most of us know, or everybody knows, people live in cities for a variety of reasons, not just supply of housing. And as most of you know, the last 4 years of housing bills, here's just 4 of them. Way back in 2018, it was 827, which required unlimited density near bus stops. It failed. The next year it came back. They just changed the number, made small changes, and that failed as well. And then last year, it was SB 1120, and that failed at the last second. And that requires lot splits of single family homes where you can put 2 units on each of the 2 new lots. So you'd go from 1 unit to 4 at a minimum. Some think it's more. And then of course, this year, SB 9, which was SB 1120, did pass, and it was just signed into law by Governor Newsom. And that's just one, right? There's been over 60 that have passed in the last 5 or 6 years. So SB 9 passed, what now? Well, that's what I'm here to talk about, a constitutional amendment to make zoning and land use locally controlled or community affairs. It's an initiative I crafted and brainchild about 2.5 years ago. I was in Sacramento and they were working on 827 and 828, and I met Scott Wiener, Senator Allen marched me in, and we sat down and discussed it. And, I asked him then, where's the affordable housing component in these? And he just, frankly, just kind of looked at me and didn't really have an answer. And we talked about a lot of other things moving forward. And none of these bills have had affordable housing component on it. And so anyway, that was 2.5 years ago. I can't believe it. And then Assemblymember Miritsuchi, he liked it a lot. And gosh, I think I got my math wrong, 3 years ago, whatever it was. Assemblymember Miritsuchi liked it a lot. And he would watch him have it going up there, talking to him all this time. And it was always kind of in the background, the initiative. So as the clock wound down, he said, well, why don't I just make it a bill? I'm going to make it a bill. And I was, well, okay, the legislature's never going to pass it by 2/3 to get it on a ballot, but he goes, that's okay, it'll build awareness and it'll be something to rally around. And he got State Senator Stephen Glazier to co-author it. It became what is known as ACA 7. That stands for Assembly Constitutional Amendment number 7. And he floated it way back in March. And of course, it never went anywhere. And as the clock wound down in August, our advocacy had failed yet again. It was clear 9 and 10 were going to pass to some of us. And so we filed the initiative, dusted off the initiative and filed it. It's now called our Neighborhood Voices Initiative. What does it do? It amends Article 11 of the California Constitution. It's a transfer of power for zoning and land use from Sacramento back to local agencies. It's just zoning and land use. All other laws are applicable, CEQA, Fair Housing Act. There's exceptions for the Coastal Act and large infrastructure projects related to, transportation, water, communications, things like that. And it supersedes any previously enacted state laws. That's the number one question we get. Is this supersede 9? Does this undo 9? Does this undo, and people have a variety that they'd like to undo. And it's a transfer of power. So yes, it doesn't have a retroactivity clause. It doesn't. If it passes and is approved by the voters, then cities can then start passing laws to, accomplish what they need to accomplish and how they want to accomplish it. And the state can't get in their way. Technically, it's called the Brand Wong Mendoza Land Use Initiative. We have 5 proponents. 3 of them are elected officials, so their names have to appear in the FPPC committee, initiative committee. It's filed with the Attorney General August 25th in time to make the November 2022 ballot. And the title and summary is due Monday. Yep, we're getting title and summary Monday, and then we'll have 6 months to gather what will require well over 1 million signatures, probably more like 1.5 million signatures. And it's going to be a huge cost, $10 to $12 million to qualify. So we are on a huge fundraising push. Here are the proponents. John Heath, he's now former president of United Homeowners Association in Los Angeles. He's an attorney. Jovita Hernandez, who's a council member up in the city of Brentwood in the Bay Area. Dennis Richards is a former planning commissioner in City and County of San Francisco. And Peggy Wong is a mayor of Yorba Linda. And then myself, it's quite a tripartisan group, we call it. People are Democrats, Republicans, different areas of the state. And so we try to do as broad a coalition as we could. Many statewide community groups have formed to protect local control over the years. Livable California, California Alliance of Locally Elected Officials, which I know Jackie's been on, and Walter, CCLC, California Communities for Local Control, which is what Mike Griffiths started in Torrance, and he's now going to float our resolution around to all the various cities around California to get them to pass resolutions of support for this initiative, and of course, many other homeowner groups. So the best way cities can help is just pass a resolution of support. Redondo already passed one. Cities are passing them right and left now. So it would be great. I was on Hawthorne on Tuesday night. Sorry, Councilman Montero, you have to listen to this again. But that's what's happening, and that's the best thing a city can do is, get up to speed on it and quickly pass a resolution of support. And stop our website right now, stopsacramento.org. That's probably going to transition to restore our neighborhood. Our neighborhoodvoices.org. So that's to come. So anyway, I'm happy to take questions. Thanks for the time. Thanks for moving me up. I really appreciate it. And you're going to really enjoy Sharon Burns' I don't know about enjoy it, but it's going to be very insightful about the commoditization and how much of our residential real estate is really turned into a new investment vehicle for institutional firms. And I guess I'll leave it with this. The example I give people, because they often say, well, what does it mean? What does it mean for me? I go, well, if you live in a single family home and your neighbor's house goes up for sale, you're not going to get a new neighbor. You're going to get an LLC or some other financial institution that you won't be able to contact, and they are valuing it much higher than what would have been a new neighbor. They're probably going to pay cash, and then they're going to build it out. They're going to build 4 units, and apartments are the new cash flow mechanism they're using, and you're going to get a box with a maximum 4-foot setback, and that's in SB 9. So yeah, the world is going to change, and this is an international, and you're going to hear that from Sharon. This has become an international issue about upzoning everywhere, and so unfortunately, to come to California, and you're going to be hearing a lot about it, not just locally, not just at the state level, but already nationally and internationally. So yeah, happy to.
Thanks, Mayor Brandt. I think we have Councilmember Zuckerman with a question.
Sure.
Yeah, Bill, thanks so much for coming and for the amazing amount of work you put into this. Fundraising for the initiative, what are your plans or the plans or possible plans for a method to raise money?
Well, we're talking to anybody and everybody. I'm doing things like this. I'm going on the Culver City town hall. There's people in the Bay Area going on town halls. We've hired 2 fundraisers. We're talking to just the average person that's concerned about this. We're talking to as many wealthier groups and people who are willing to help. The AIDS Healthcare Foundation has already donated $50,000. I'm talking to the Irvine Company tomorrow. I'm hoping to get, money out of them, but it's right. I mean, I've never done this before, and neither has the other proponents on there, but we have hired professional fundraisers. We do have our professional campaign, 2 actually, campaign consultants and PR and media consultants. So through all that, we're hoping. But is there
a way to also have a separate fundraising organization that is legally separate from the cities, that the cities can participate in?
Well, I don't know about that. The cities can't donate to this,
right?
So I don't know that you could set up a mechanism. I mean, I've never heard that. So I really don't know how to answer.
Okay.
But you can visit our website at stopsacramento.org. And
I to do that.
Yeah, and learn all about it. And there's a resolution posted there that cities are using just as templates. And there's, how anybody wants to donate or participate or volunteer. So the signature gathering, it's really just about getting it on the ballot right now. So the money would go to signature gatherers, and we've got a huge a huge volunteer effort going to crank up too. So the more volunteers we get, the cheaper it will be to qualify.
Hey, we got a question from Vice Chair Cruikshank.
Thank you, Drew. Bill, thank you for what you're doing. We really appreciate it in our city. Will there be a difference in the way your bill would protect charter cities versus general law cities?
No, that's a good question, because when we first crafted this, it just applied to charter cities, but it now applies to general law cities as well as counties and as well as unincorporated area counties. So yeah, we've learned a lot through this whole process, and a lot of attorneys have looked at it and continue to, analyze it and pick it apart. So we got a strong team, and Stormwasser and Witcher, one of the law firms, as well as Nossaman, which is based in Sacramento and Los Angeles. So yeah, it's yeah, we're confident about it. But it's not legislation really. It's an amendment to the Constitution. So it's transfer of power. So a lot of people were over the months trying to spice it up with other things that weren't really related to what we were doing. And there's such a thing as a single subject rule, and we've stuck to that, and including you can't override a local approved initiative as it relates to zoning and land use, which undoes that portion of SB 10.
Terrific. Thank you, Bill.
Yeah, thank you, John.
Any other questions?
Oh, Bill, I'm wondering, any thoughts on how to arouse support and interest and make this palatable to non-homeowners?
Well, hopefully it will be. I mean, it's, our neighborhood voices, and I rented for 20 years, and I was, not that concerned about zoning statewide. It didn't really, reach my radar screen till I grew up and got older and bought a house. So I don't think you're going to see you do see a big push from the affordable housing advocates. In fact, the angriest people I've seen are the African-American families in South LA. Because if you listen to them, they'll say, look, we went through redlining, we went through covenants, and restrictive lending policies, and we finally found our slice of the pie here. And, I'll be damned if they're coming to take it a different way. And so they're very angry. And they see gentrification as what's going to really destroy their culture and the communities that they have built for many, many years. So it's good to have them on our side. And as I said, John Heath, he's an attorney for an affordable housing developer. And he's been advocating for years too. I just met him a few months ago, and it was amazing how we'd been on the same tracks in different rooms, I guess, way to put it. So, but they're very angry affordable housing advocates who figure it out. Not all of them do, but there's no affordable housing in this. It's all market rate. It's all market rate. In fact, the big labor unions at the state are supporting it. They're not supporting it. They're not opposing it. Can I correct that? They're not opposing it, which is huge, right? Because I thought the labor groups would oppose it, and that could have been our death knell. But their answer from their top people is, that there's no affordable housing in anything coming out of Sacramento, and so then they see these as this market rate that'll displace affordable and restrict where there can be affordable. So sorry,
we have a question from Councilmember Derringer.
Hi, Bill. I just wanted to, obviously I really support the measure and trying to put something in the Constitution. There was something raised earlier this week in a committee I was in regarding a committee that's studying your initiative and ACA 7, which is coming back next year. And it's a combination of the Environmental Quality Policy Committee as well as the Housing Committee. And there was some concern expressed there that, albeit in the preamble, there is an indication that CEQA and the Fair Employment and Housing Act and other acts that are specifically listed will not be impacted by this. There's nothing in the actual operative language that says that. So we're raising some concerns that that would throw out CEQA and all these other laws that I think should remain. So what's your answer to that?
Yeah, thanks for bringing that up, Bean. I'm very familiar with those two committees, and I reached out to Jason Ryan today to ask if I could present and answer questions at the next meeting next week. Still waiting to hear back from him, because there's no operative language in the meat of the initiative, because it doesn't need to be. This is just related to zoning and land use. In the section 1, which is more like a preamble, states more the intent of the proponents. And so there's a lot of stuff in there. And the intent of the proponents is not to affect CEQA, not to affect fair housing, and a variety of other things, or the Coastal Act. So all applicable laws still apply other than zoning and land use. So this is something that the league brought up last July, and I answered it then, and they just continue to bring it up. And I really don't know why. So I'm hoping that they'll let John Heath actually come on, who is an attorney, who has had a very strong hand in the crafting of this, who can answer those legal questions better than I can. But yeah, we heard that concern, and hoping those committees rally behind it, because that's the whole purpose of what's called Cal Cities now, is to protect local control. And they actually passed a resolution 2 years ago in Long Beach. I was there supporting it, to support an initiative to protect local control, and it passed. So here we are, and yet, I don't know, somehow they have heartburn about this, and it's just, I don't think they're properly interpreting it.
Okay, well, I'm just letting you know that the operative language are the sections starting with section 2 and section 3, which actually add items to the California Constitution. The preamble is not an operative language, just as a legal matter. So that's why they're raising those concerns, because it's mentioned in section 1, which is intent. It's sort of intent language, but it's not operational language. So.
Yeah, and as I said, it doesn't need to be in the operation language. It doesn't, the operative language just affects zoning and land use. It's quite clear. And the fair housing law, CEQA is not zoning and land use. A city will still have to analyze the environmental impacts and determine any significant impacts and impart mitigations. It's not about zoning or land use. Likewise with the fair housing laws. I mean, that's not zoning. It's just, you can't discriminate for a variety of reasons. So it's not in the operative language because it would be inappropriate.
Okay.
Thanks for the question.
Yeah, Councilmember Zuckerman, did you have another question? I see your hand still up.
Yes, I do. And
okay.
Kind of a follow-on to B's question. Is it safe to say then, Bill, that it will not affect RENA numbers?
Oh, it'll affect RENA numbers. And as you noticed, all those bills they've been passing are on top of RENA. SB 9 on those lot splits, it moves some areas into 30 units per acre. Some areas are done, I believe. Okay. Yeah, it will impact RENA because, and that's good to see, because RENA impacts zoning, right? And so if they've been forcing all this to upzone, and it will definitely undo RENA.
Okay, yeah, I was afraid that those numbers would stay. It's just a question of how you zone to obtain those. But thank you very much. That's important for me to know anyway.
Yeah. Most people don't know what RENA is. We all do, right? When you mentioned RENA, oh my God, it's a 10-minute conversation, or at least 5 to explain it. So, yeah.
Hey, thank you, Bill. We appreciate you being on.
Yeah, no, thanks for the time. Thanks so much for moving me up. Really, really appreciate it. And hopefully you guys will get with the cities and pass a resolution of support very quickly. I really appreciate it.
Yep, we'll do. All right, thanks, Bill. Have fun at Culver City.
Yeah. So long, everybody.
Right. Next up, we've got Sharon Byrne, VP for the United Nations Association of Santa Barbara and Tri-Counties. And Sharon, thanks for being on tonight.
Thank you very much for having me. I'm going to do a presentation with you tonight. I'm going to walk you around kind of the world, introduce you to some other city councils and mayors and what they're up against, which is the same thing you're up against. We're going to leave the California framing of it's NIMBY versus YIMBY, state versus, RENA versus cities. Some other players are moving around, and it's really important that you know about them and maybe some of the legislation you can look at as cities. I was telling Jackie when I came into this meeting, I just sat through 4 hours of the Santa Barbara City Planning Commission, where they took up Senate Bill 9. And I wanted to share with you that we had put together, we had a great statewide legislation team. B. Derringer was an anchor player on it. We did a town hall for like 1,500 people to educate them and get them ready to really push on their legislators to push back on Senate Bills 9 and 10. Obviously, they went through. So today, the city, Santa Barbara City Planning Commission was completely freaked out. It's passed, what are we gonna do, et cetera. Our statewide team had put together an ordinance, if you will, that cities can adopt using the few local controls left to you to mitigate the worst of 9 and 10. So I got on public comment, submitted the ordinance, and made the points. And I will tell you, my planning commission bit and went for it. And the emergency ordinance that they passed is going to include the following provisions. All the SB 9 plots have to include one affordable unit up to moderate level income, that they will look at assessing impact fees for anything built under SB 9 and use the impact fees to maybe look at building affordable housing, that they will mandate a minimum of one off-street space per unit. Not sure that's going to pass muster, but we're going to try it. And they're going to exclude the extremely high wildfire zones as defined by CAL FIRE. So that's going to be our emergency interim ordinance. And if you want, I'll circulate a copy of it when it gets written to you, because pretty much every city's got to do the same thing in order to not have the provisions of Senate Bill 9 take effect January 1st. This is about the most you could do to mitigate, but it's something. So I just wanted to share that with you, that we're trying it. I'll let you know how it goes, but you know, I know every city's kind of up against this wall. All right, so I'm going to share my screen with you, and I'm going to walk you through what is going on around the world. So just as a backstory, I am the Vice President of the United Nations Association of Santa Barbara and Tri-Counties. It is our job to bring the work of the United Nations back to our communities. The UN has a model where they very much believe that if you want to do things about climate change, poverty, homelessness, et cetera, you really need to be working with mayors, because mayors are the closest to their people. If you can get change at the curb, you can get change across the world. So it's not unusual that we would look at things from this direction. I was a delegate this year to the annual conference on the status of women, representing the United States of America. And I was also a delegate to the Generation Equality Forums, Equalite, in Paris and Mexico City. So the way the UN looks at housing is it's a human right. And we had it written into the Universal Declaration of Human Rights that was passed in 1948 by the then newly created United Nations. That is Eleanor Roosevelt holding the UN Declaration of Human Rights. And around the world, this may not be known to you, but homelessness is a huge problem. And it is in places that you would not expect, such as the United Kingdom and Canada, who have really decent social safety nets. Germany obviously has quite a huge homeless problem. A lot of it is from refugees from other countries, but it's a fair amount of domestic as well. And various cities in Europe have really staggeringly high homeless populations relative to their population size. Obviously, the United States is the big dog at the table with more than 500,000 homeless. Los Angeles and New York City are the big lead cities on that. But I don't know if you're aware, China has 1 to 3 million homeless. And a lot of it is caused by migration patterns within China. 100 million estimated worldwide. And it's become a huge problem. The way the UN looks at housing is, it is stability, it is security, it is dignity, but it should not be a commodity. So in 2019, their housing rapporteur on adequate housing sent a very harshly worded letter to Blackstone Corporation. And this letter went around the world and made a lot of major news media. Basically, they looked at this as a human rights issue. And in their minds, Blackstone moving very aggressively in many markets around the world, particularly the United States, where they will acquire entire subdivisions, buildings, et cetera, raise the rent, jack tenants out, and really force and displace people. That the UN feels that this is an egregious business practice, and it is creating more homeless, and it is creating more problems around the world. They are correct about that. In the United States, starting in the year 2008 with the Great Recession, Blackstone and others started moving into foreign housing markets and into US markets and buying up subdivisions, buying up housing. Mayor Brand referenced that you know, renter markets is the way to go. And that includes entire subdivisions. And you're looking here at, you know, the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, articles that these are not exactly media that defend the renter classes or speak for people that need affordable housing. But even they see a problem with this model. And you can see one of the big takers here is Deutsche Wohnen. I do a lot of disaster recovery work in Montecito. We have been seeing Deutsche Bank buying quite a few Montecito properties just for straight cash. And we know that the intention is to either develop them or flip them, that this is their model. So in Los Angeles, we have 90,000 vacant homes and we have 50,000 people experiencing homelessness. It does not take city councils and mayors very long to do this math, that there is a little problem here. And there is a project called the Anti-Eviction Project. It's operating heavily in the United States. They are mapping who is buying homes across the US. This is the California map. And you can see where the areas of concentration of corporate home buying are. And it is in Sacramento, San Francisco, as you would expect, but look at Los Angeles. Heavy, heavy penetration in the Los Angeles area. And again, who's the big perpetrator? It is Blackstone, followed by several other big perpetrators. So I'm going to take you out of the US. Let's go look globally. First, we're going to stop in Seoul, Korea. And in Seoul, Korea, the average property is now 14 times the average household income. This is a problem that California is extremely familiar with. And according to KB Bank data, that is pricing low-income and middle-income families just out of the market. It is causing political upheaval in South Korea. What you are looking at here is very interesting. These down here on the bottom are existing single-family and multifamily units that people were living in. People have been forced out of those, and they are going to be turned into these towers, which are at luxury, and we call it market rate, but it really should be called the extortion rate. It's whatever we can force you to pay. That's what's going to happen is these people are going to be, these are going to be the new towers that are going to take over this landscape. Where were the people that were living here? Where are they going to go? It's a big problem. So one thing Seoul has looked at is how could they convert maybe hotels into studios to look at easing the housing crunch. We've tried something a little similar here with Project Roomkey. And it's because the price of an average home in Korea is up more than 50% in the last 4 years. People just can't keep up with those prices. China is so big, it's really hard to get your head around anything that goes on there, but they have a higher homeownership rate than we do. And real estate is 29% of their GDP. But they have something called ghost cities, where they've overbuilt and they've got millions of empty homes. Their president came out recently and said houses are meant to be lived in, not for speculation. So the move that China has made is they have tightened controls on their developers, and they have really tightened up what you can do through banks to stop speculation. And you probably have been watching in the news where one of their biggest real estate developers, Evergrande, is on the brink of bankruptcy, right? They are $300 million in debt, $300 billion in debt. That is the market cap of AT&T and Disney, just to put that in perspective. New Zealand. This is a scene that's extremely familiar to those of us in California, right? There's a homeless person's belongings here in a business district. They have gotten such a problem that they actually got a human rights inquiry made. And so they tried a bunch of cooling measures to see if they could kind of tamper their housing market prices down, similar to what happened in the United States. Pandemic capital, pandemic stimulus, right? Stock market's overheated. So everybody started plowing into real estate, right? To try to get highest rates of returns. And so the stuff that they've tried has not worked. And they have gotten the highest property spikes in about just the last year. They've gone up 30% amongst the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development Nations. Going to Europe now, London. Most of my family lives in the UK. And so they have mentioned to me more than a few times that housing is just out of whack. And yet the UK has social housing models. So how did this go this sideways? Well, similar thing. Investors moved in and they do what's called a buy to leave. They buy the property and they let it sit. And it's empty and no one lives in it. And it's just a store of wealth. And the idea is it's going to go up over time. They also have tremendous amount of second home investments, a similar problem in California. London is a financial capital in the world. So you can imagine there would be a lot of people that would want a second home there for various reasons, but their local governments are really having a hard time keeping up with it, sizing it, how big is it, how many, they don't really have the data. So it's really hard for them to make policy around what you do with second homes. And then Airbnb, boy, it's a familiar villain to many of us, right? So London is estimated to have the highest number of Airbnbs in all of Europe, at least 75,000. So this is a really big problem for them because a lot of people in London need to rent. And if everybody's buying everything out for Airbnb, the price went up and you're competing with investors for a place to live. It's pushing a lot of Londonites out. Barcelona is an extremely interesting case. So they have a huge deficit of 170,000 homes. They have 450,000 vacant homes. And their problem was traced to Airbnb, that they just got bought up like crazy by Airbnb and VRBO kind of, companies, and it just ruined neighborhoods. And so Barcelonans started getting really mad, and they started deciding that what they were going to do is fine people for leaving flats empty. And their mayor, Ada Colau, is a complete pistol. And she has fined 2 companies almost at least 3 million euros for just leaving 24 flats empty. She's going one step further and saying, you rent out these empty flats or I'm going to repossess them. And you're going to see that this is starting to become a bit of a trend in Europe. And it's a very interesting trend. And it's a real struggle when, like I say, you're looking at people that are buying buildings. And over here, you see that Blackstone has a big empire in Spain, as does Deutsche Wohnen. Berlin is probably the most interesting case of all. 80% of Berliners rent. And the city tried a rent freeze in the pandemic to stop residents from being pushed out. A federal court in Germany overturned it. So Germans started looking at who is it that owns our stuff. And of course, they found Blackstone was to be a key player here. And it was the typical thing, let's buy the apartment building, kick everybody out, triple the rent. And then, people will either get pushed out or they'll pay the rent. They also have a refugee problem. So what they are also doing is turning first floor shops into refugee shelters and then, really charging the government's extremely high rates to rent those shops. So Berliners put something on the ballot, and it was called actually the Deutsche Wohnen Initiative. And this initiative, Deutsche Wohnen is the housing buying arm of Deutsche Bank, and they are in operation all around the world. What the intent of this initiative was, signed by 350,000 citizens, was to allow the Berlin government to seize homes owned by corporations, if they own more than 3,000 of them, absolutely seize them. It's called expropriation. And then turn around and turn those units over to a Berlin housing authority that now needs to be created to rent them to citizens at fair prices. You can see here, if you can read German, this passed at 56.9% of the vote. And because more than 25% of Berliners who were registered to vote voted, it is ratified and it meets the German constitutional test. Very interesting case. Canada had a big election also in September. All 3 of these happened in September, California's, Berlin's, and Canada's election. And at that time, it was thought that Justin Trudeau, the president, thought he would call it to strengthen the Liberal stronghold in the Canadian Parliament because they'd done so well in the pandemic. Oh no, right away, the big issue became housing. That election went completely sideways on him because Canadian home prices have gone up so much. And you can see here, there's a group called Canada Housing Crisis, and they've got billboards up around Toronto and Ontario and in Montreal, really pushing back on what's going on in the housing crisis. So here was what he pledged in order to win re-election as the Canadian Prime Minister, that he would ban foreign investment in Canadian homes for up to 2 years. And he would end the practice of blind bidding, where parties do not know what the other parties are doing, so that you would have a chance to see what that corporation is overbidding on you. In California, coming back here domestically, we have only focused on removing our local controls from our cities, because we're all villains here apparently, increasing our supply by upzoning, and ending single family neighborhoods as racist. But every city knows that what's getting built around here is a bunch of luxury housing, and we don't have an affordable luxury housing crisis. What we also have is a severe resource problem, right? That we don't have the water, we don't have some of the infrastructure that we would need to do all this upzoning. So there's been this sort of theory of, supply, build it, it will, it'll trickle down. I think we've seen what the very wealthy corporations are going to do with the housing that they build. So our California governor's done some things, right, with home key, room key, and the $12 billion into housing and homelessness. That's great. And the federal protections and pandemic stimulus and rental assistance. And these were good emergency pandemic measures. But California is the world's 5th largest economy. It would make absolute and total sense that we are in the fray with all the speculative forces that are driving up housing prices just as much as the rest of the world is. And nothing in the legislature came out this year to do a single thing to curb the impact of speculation in your markets. So I'm going to offer you 3 buckets of solutions based on what I've been looking at around the world. First bucket is anti-displacement. Let's just stop making more homeless people. We need to stop doing that. Anti-speculation, let's curb the impact that institutional investors have. And then let's explore opportunities to increase affordable housing supply, especially in places where there just isn't any, and you normally wouldn't think to look there, rather than decimate single family neighborhoods. So to get at anti-displacement, cities have a very vested interest, right, in stopping more of your citizens from becoming homeless, right? You really want that to stop, because all the costs of displacement and homelessness are borne by all citizens. We are on the socialization model here. It would be great if we would recognize housing as a human right. We do not do that. Some countries and some places have written that into their constitutions. Neither California nor the US is one of them. And we should mandate mitigation for any development or purchase that will displace current residents. Holland just passed a law for this very thing. If a building just got sold, you do not get to evict anybody out of it for 2 years. They are absolutely determined to stop making more people displaced. And then you really want to make it very unattractive to execute any kind of no-fault evictions. I believe our state protection clause right now is 1 month mitigation, and that is probably not enough. So to get at the impacts of institutional investors, what could we do to do anti-speculation, right? We could end blind bidding and ban foreign investment the way that Canada's doing it. Citizens really should not be competing against multinational firms for a place to live. That's just, it's crazy that we're in that position. There are cities that are trying second home and vacancy taxes and fine. You saw what Barcelona is doing tonight. Vancouver has a second home and vacancy tax, and it's pretty stiff. And they're trying it to raise money to, fund affordable and homeless housing, but they're also trying to make it less attractive for you to buy something and leave it vacant. I wish we could all do this: outlaw VRBO, Airbnb, and Picasso. If you're not familiar with the Picasso model, it is a timeshare kind of model where 10 different owners buy one house in a neighborhood and they sort of occupy it at different times and, have parties in it, what have you. These kind of things just destroy community. And they also accelerate speculative buying. And it means you have less citizens living in a community. And it means that the only business model where somebody can afford a home is to turn it into a financialized, profitized asset. But all of us, especially the ones of us that live in high fire country, and we all live in earthquake country, we all know in an emergency, you're only as good as your neighbors. Half of my street became VRBO. Do you think I'm going to run down there and throw a bucket on their burning house? No, I don't even know them, right? They're not neighbors anymore. They're just a mini hotel. So I really feel like if property that is attractive to tourists, that looks like staying in a home, great. The hotel industry will go build things that look like that. Real homes should be for people to live in. And Aspen tried something too, which I think is really smart. They require workforce housing fee to be paid for every luxury home built. Workforce housing is desperation, and it's needed for whenever you build luxury, you demand workers. It creates demand for workers. They have to live somewhere. So impact fees and workforce housing fees could be a good way to get at how do you get a bucket of money where you could start building that workforce housing. And then finally, I think we got to look at places where we're not looking today for the housing. And I think the pandemic opened a lot of doors to that. One is public lands just really need to be used for affordable housing. My mass transit district here has an unbelievably huge lot next to the county jail, next to the county mental health building. Would be a great place to put in a lot of affordable housing or supportive services housing. They're building luxury units. I don't understand how a mass transit district gets away with doing that. I think there's more pandemic opportunities that died in this session, but we should look at them, such as the one that rewarded cities for building affordable housing in a dead big box retail kind of a store, or converting vacant office space to housing, converting dead motels to homeless housing. There were good opportunities in this year. And then I think there's zoning and fast pass for new types of housing, right? So every generation brings something with it. It looks for a different model. Gen Zs tend to kind of want to live in communal sort of buildings with a big common area and like dorm rooms on the outside. They don't like this idea of apartments and all that. But, there's other people that really love the tiny home model. And honestly, there probably could be a good place for that. So there you go. I'd love to see us work together to get to enough housing for all of our people, but that gives you kind of a picture of around the world, what is going on and what various cities like yourselves are trying in order to combat some of these forces.
All right, thanks, Sharon. Really informative. We got time for a few questions. So if you wouldn't mind raising your hand by clicking the hand icon if you'd like to ask a question or make a comment.
I'm amazed if Sharon got everybody speechless. I'd have to tell you, I heard this and I was just overwhelmed myself. I want to say thank you on behalf of everybody, but I hope there's some questions.
Don't feel bad if there aren't. It took the Little Hoover Commission about 3 minutes to kind of get past it and go, wait, so it's okay if it takes you a minute because it was a lot.
We do have a question from Lori Jacobs.
Okay, so I'm just trying to digest this. That was incredible. You hit on so many points. I have a house up in Lake Arrowhead, and they're going crazy up here because of all the rentals, and then there's people who are saying, but if we don't rent out, we're not going to get enough tourists. They're trying to get more people to build hotels up here. This is just a small little mountain town, but the presentation you gave on how big it is globally, we need to take the best of each of those countries' programs and put them together. But what are our next steps? I guess, how can we do some of the things you talked about?
That's actually a very good question. So I will tell you, ever since I gave this presentation before Little Hoover, then I gave it before the California Association of Local Electeds, I've been getting asked to do this by cities up and down the state, right? Because they're all starting to look at like, whoa, what is it possible for us to do? Some things really the feds, you really would need the feds, right, to change a policy, right? Like, so banning foreign investment is, but as mayors and as city council people, you do have vested interests in curbing the impacts on this, right? So every city could take a hard look at VRBO and just say, you know what, I want to ban that. That is just a bad model. That is just that is just killing my housing market right now. And I want to ban that. And like I say, I think if hotels, that the Hilton corporations and the Marriotts and all of those, if they really truly believe that staying in homes is here to stay, that tourists really like this experience, they will build properties that look like homes for people to stay in. But we need to get them out of neighborhoods. It was a mistake to have ever let that get off the ground. It has just chewed up so much housing supply, right? And that is pushing people out. It also made it so that the only way some people could afford a house was to financialize it. I mean, we had people cry to us in Santa Barbara saying, this is the only way I can buy a house is to turn it to a VRBO. And we're like, then this is a bad model. You're driving the prices higher, right? So there are you don't need to take on the whole world at once, but you could chunk out some things, right? That could work, I think. And then I do think the vacancy taxes, I think any city could do that. Barcelona and Vancouver have solid ordinances. You could get copies of them and see what would, and adapt it. Why reinvent the wheel, right? Try it, see if it would work. So I think there are some things that cities could start to try that will nip at the heels of the investors and make your housing markets less frothy, speculative messes, which is, I think, what is happening to all of us across the world. And I think it's happening to us in cities like Lake Arrowhead. That is a perfect investor target. Why would they not do that?
Thank you. Wally, you have a question?
Yeah, I have a question and a comment, if you could, or an observation, if you could comment on it. The question is, to what extent is this an income problem insofar as, granted, a lot of these houses are not being rented, as our ADUs not being rented, a lot of them, but of those there are, how is it, you can't ask for a rent, or you can't sell for something if someone's not going to buy it at that price. So that's the question. And then the observation is, I don't understand why carbon reduction, particularly given the current situation, isn't part of their calculus. We know here that land use and transportation go together. You can't separate them. And so if you're going to add density to an auto dependent neighborhood, you're going to add cars to the road and carbon to the air. So if you could comment on that, and then also address the question of who in the world is paying these prices?
You asked me a very good question. On the carbon, I'm 100% with you, right? That I feel very much the same way, that pushing people further and further out creates a very different problem, right? Which is why don't we just throw more pollutants in the air, because we're throwing more cars in the road. And again, this is socialized. The costs of this are still socialized to you as cities, because guess who gets to pay for the road repairs? Right? You're going to pay one way or another. You're already paying, I guess I should say. And to the comment of income and who can afford this stuff. Okay, that's a very interesting question. In 2008 in particular, there were stories that circulated around when properties that were foreclosed on went on the courthouse steps to be auctioned, right? So there were guys showing up with bags of cashier checks. And they would sit in the hotel room in the lobby the night before the auction, and they would divide the checks up amongst themselves, and they would figure out for each property listed on the auction exactly what they were going to bid. Those people worked for places like Blackstone and Deutsche Bank and Wells Fargo and some of the other big institutional investors that got on this field. They are massive. It is really hard for you to get your head around how big they are and how many markets they are operating in. I mean, they are multinational firms. So that is who started this, and that is who is continuing to do this. Where I live in Montecito, we went through a terrible debris flow, And at the time that we went through that debris flow 3 years ago, we thought, oh, our housing market's dead. Nobody's going to want to live in a zone where boulders have come down the hill. And we've been on worldwide news, blah, blah, blah. No, we started seeing cash sales overnight. And when I looked at who was doing the buying on the title transfers, heavy Deutsche Bank. They were coming in and buying the properties up as cheap as they could get them. And we knew what they were going to do. They were going to flip them. So that's who you're up against. You're not up against a mom and pop investor that's buying an apartment building. You are dealing with multinational, multi-billion-dollar firms.
Thanks.
All right. That's going to do it for questions. Can you distribute, Sharon, your deck? Maybe through Jackie, or do we already have it?
We post all of our slides on the,
awesome.
on the web. And I think Natalie, if we haven't given it to Natalie, please do.
Okay. If you ever want if you want me to come back and speak to your city councils or neighborhood meetings, I'm happy to do that too, right? A lot of people have gotten very interested in this topic. So happy to help you in any way I can.
All right, thanks, Sharon. Appreciate you being on. Thanks so much. Okay, next presentation is Service Planning Area 8 update. And I believe we have Lindsay Lastra.
Yes, good evening, everybody. Can you hear me? Hi.
Yes.
Great. So I'm just going to do some quick updates. I really want to just share again, as we've always tried to do, what's going on as far as public health is involved. A quick update about COVID, of course, and really just some things that we've been working on. So let me just quickly share my slides, and I'll share my screen. Sorry, I'm making sure I got the right one. Okay. Can you see that okay?
Yes, now we can. Yeah.
Okay, great. So let me try to see if I can get into my next slide. Okay, so again, I'm sure everyone's been hearing about the boosters, and we just wanted to, or I wanted to do a quick reminder or kind of information about the boosters. As you all know, now all boosters are available for all the 3 vaccines that we were approved. Right now, the Johnson & Johnson, I'm reminding people if they've had their boost, they've had their last shot, or their first shot, I guess it was only one time, 2 months ago or more, that they are now eligible for it if they meet the eligibility criteria, which I'll go over quickly. And then for any residents that received either the Moderna or Pfizer, are also now eligible, but if they had those vaccines at least 6 months ago. So if you've had either of those and meet any of the 5 following 4 criteria, then you are definitely eligible for the boosters. And so that's anybody who's 65 years or older and has one of those vaccines, then you should go get your booster as long as you're meeting that time frame. Anyone 18 and older who lives in a long-term care setting or has underlying medical conditions or works or lives in a high-risk setting. And so all of that, it's always my suggestion is always, talking with a physician or provider, or if you went through a county system to get your booster, contacting that number to just kind of ask when you're set, when to get your next one, your booster scheduled. Most of the time, though, our systems are already reaching out to folks to say, hey, you can come and get your booster now. So suggesting just continue to work with the folks where you got your original vaccine doses. I did want to share that we have developed guidance as far as Halloween and the holidays. Unfortunately, COVID is still out there. We still have people who are not vaccinated, so we are still recommending the masking. But there's a lot more just kind of guidance on how to do holiday celebrations in a safe manner. And then one tool that we always provide is our educational presentation. So we do have staff that can go out to do presentations, and we can also request our physicians to talk about myths and what it is that, how why they should get the vaccine if people are still resistant to getting the vaccine or having questions, because we talk about that there's a lot of information out there, but it's not necessarily getting to everybody. So we want to make sure we provide it to as many people as possible. Let's see, next slide. That's about COVID. What I wanted to do is also share some of the other work that we do as public health. I know one of the big talks about that we do with this group, with you all, is what does public health do? And so one of our other areas is environmental health. And so the Dominguez channel that was happening out in city of Carson, I wanted to make sure just to share some information about it. And if you have any colleagues who needs to get this information, you will have it, but to share this information to the residents and whatnot. So just a quick recap. So the odor event happening in the Dominguez Channel, we have been working with our sister department of Public Works, with hazmat, and essentially public health helps to talk about the health impacts to the community. And so we've been working by going door to door in the community. We reached about 8,700 homes, reached out to 200 businesses in that area, as well as reached out to all the schools to really talk about health impacts. And if people were experiencing serious issues such as nausea and all sorts of other health-related issues, who they should reach out to if they need to talk to a physician, or could potentially getting relocated to another location. So essentially, I just want to share that, as public health, we always talk around, it's more than just the letter grades, right? But we're also working with environmental health to go out and manage health impacts when it comes to environmental conditions. For this event, we have been providing health recommendations for the residents. And this can be this will be provided to you in the slides, as we always provide you all our slides. But essentially, if people have their symptoms worsening, it's always about relocating to another area until the odors go away. If the symptoms are life-threatening, of course, to seek immediate medical care, keeping the smell basically out of people's homes if at all possible, and then using certain HEPA filters for their air conditioning or heating, etc. There's also some HEPA indoor air filters that they can purchase for their home, and keeping pets indoors, because pets have been, we've seen some of the pets also having impacts because of the odor causing like difficulty breathing, vomiting, nausea, etc. With this though, I did want to share that there is a reimbursement program through our Public Works, the sister department of Public Works. So they have been providing different options for residents. And again, this is available. You will get these slides so that you can again share with residents, anyone who's interested. But really what the Department of Public Works is offering is reimbursing for the filter inserts for those HEPA machines or the HEPA filters. The county will also reimburse households for the filtration systems, the air purifier units, as well as reimburse households for a hotel room in LA County. There's obviously a total cost of what that would look like, $182 per day. There's a per diem as far as miscellaneous expenses, et cetera. But all of this can be found at the link here. And like I said, I'll send these slides all to you. The main thing is that this is only open or available until November 4th. But it really depends on the situation of what's happening. So if this needs to be extended, the Department of Public Works would look at that. As you all have been hearing, they've done some work to clean up and reduce the odor that has been happening through their different cleanup efforts, and things that are improving, but they're still existing. So we continue to work with AQMD, LA Fire Hazmat, just to ensure that the situation in the environment is okay for the residents to be in the community at this point. So let's see. Another just update is our flu clinics. Flu is another big thing. So last year we didn't see large flu outbreaks or even just numbers because everybody was indoors. But this year we definitely expect our flu numbers are going to be much higher. So we are urging people to definitely get the flu shot. It's the same vaccine that we see every year. We've definitely seen people who are comfortable getting that over COVID, but we definitely want people to get both. But definitely urging people to get their flu vaccine. We've been hosting clinics. Our last one is next week. It will be at our Inglewood Health Center. But there's various events happening throughout Spot 8. So I always urging people to get their flu vaccine to help mitigate kind of any other health issues when it comes to like the winter that's coming in for us. So, this is just a friendly reminder. And I was trying to be super quick, so hopefully that captures, and I wanted to see if anybody has any questions.
Thanks, Lindsay. We have a question from Councilmember Hicks. would you mind shutting the presentation down so I can see everyone's face?
Yes.
Thank you.
Does that help? Sorry, I'm trying to, I don't know what it's
Not yet. It's still in the slide mode. That's okay, but we'll have Cedric ask his question anytime. Perfect. There we are. Thank you.
Can you hear me, Drew? Can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm actually in the car and I'm doing two things at once, and like always. But to Lindsay, thank you for that information. I have some questions that my residents have been bombarding me with since the 3rd of this month in regards to the Dominguez Channel. One being, because it took a while for the county to get their program up and operational, we as a city, we put $300,000 in the coffers to assist our residents to be placed in different hotels around the South Bay area. They've been told now that they are not eligible to receive the per diem per day because they did not go through the county's program. Is that still the case?
I don't know, but I will find out.
And then the second piece that was remiss in the process is that some of my residents didn't have the proper transportation to go to some of these hotels that have been earmarked. So is there anything that can be done through transportation to assist them in getting back and forth to their respective jobs or schools?
So they had transportation issues that they couldn't get to those other, the hotels that we're offering them. And so
yes,
can you provide transportation?
Yes.
I will find out too.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, no, thank you.
Okay. That looks to be it. Thank you, Lindsay. Appreciate your time.
No problem.
Thanks for being flexible too, going later. We appreciate that.
Not a problem. My pleasure. I sorry, just one more question about the transportation. Is it just to the hotel, or were you asking also for transportation, as you were saying, to jobs and whatnot?
Well, what has happened, because some of our seniors are on the Dollar Ride program and we have the voucher program, and it's only for like $20 because we look at the nucleus of them living in the city of Carson and going out in tentacles, and it's roughly about $20 per trip. Now their trips are being between $25 to $27. So now it's coming out of their pockets for my seniors and those who are disabled to have to pay $5 and $7 above the $20 for the voucher.
Okay, thank you. That's helpful. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. I will definitely get back to you. If you can put your email on the chat box, I will link back to you.
It's very simple. It's Chicks. My first name, my last name, it comes out as chicks@carson.ca.us.
Perfect. Thank you.
Okay.
I see you, George, laughing.
You're supposed to be driving, Cedric. All right, we're on to transportation reports. Jackie, you're muted.
Yeah, I know. I just figured that out. Okay, Steve Lance, are you here?
I'm here.
Okay, so Steve, it looks like Mayor Butts is not here. So why don't you do the transportation report?
Okay, so today was the board meeting for Metro, and they had several items that might be of interest to you. They are still trying to operate their service. They've had to cancel weekday and Saturday. Now it's down to 5% of the trips. Sundays is still at 10% of the trips. And they're trying to figure out how to get the staffing to get the operations back to where it should be. There was also a real focus today on the I-710 South area clean truck program. If you recall, there was an improvement program that was abandoned, basically. And the money that was available for that program was around $50 million. So the Metro board has decided it wants to spend the money on clean trucks. So they're going to use that as seed funding for a new program. They estimate that it would take $10 billion to have a fully electric truck, but they want to spend the $50 million to seed the new program. Supervisor Kuehl was also interested in having what she called renewable CNG be included as near clean, near zero emission, but the board didn't support that. there was also some interest in extending the program rather than just being on the 710 onto the Route 60 corridor all the way out to the county line. That also didn't get support at this point. They have created a new zero emissions transportation infrastructure working group. We are going to keep our eye on that, because what that would do is provide the charging facilities, the infrastructure, the public infrastructure that needs to be done for shared charging on zero emission vehicles for fleets, whether they be trucks or buses or cars. So they're looking to create a permanent program and a big program for that. Another program that they've been working on for several months has been their, what they called originally their Fairless Service Initiative. That has devolved into a program called the LIFE program, where they want to expand the program. They're going to start charging fares again starting January 10th. At least that's their intent as of this meeting. We'll see at the December meeting whether that date holds. But they're going to start charging fares with a 50% discount initially, and 3 months of free passes for new life enrollees. Those are the low-income folks. The public education program is ongoing with paid ads, and you'll start to see it on billboards and such. And the other thing is, that's it. There wasn't any other thing, sorry. That's my update for Metro.
Steve, didn't you, I don't know if you said this, that they're running a full schedule, but they only have 60% ridership, is that
right?
Correct?
They're running, they're back to running their pre-COVID schedule, except for the 10% that they can't find drivers for, especially on Sundays. So there's a feeling at the board that that's intolerable, and the executive staff agrees that there should never be a missed pullout or a canceled trip. But the reality is they're trying to find drivers that and train them and get them back up to support the full schedules that they're ostensibly operating.
Okay. Thank you, Steve.
Yep.
Then are we on to Christian for transportation?
Yes.
Christian.
Hey, everyone. Just a handful of things. So COG staff is meeting with each of your cities right now, city staffs, as part of the Metro budget request process. So new applications for projects and changes to current projects are due on December 1st. So just so you're aware, you can always chat with your public works directors or whatnot related to that. Measure R, South Bay Transit Invest Program projects have been officially approved as of our last meeting, and the funding agreements now can be executed. So we had a C-Line, the Metro is doing C-Line virtual tours. So they're not going out and meeting with anybody, but you can go to these virtual tours to get an idea of what it is they're looking at and studying as part of the EIR process. So if you go to their website, you'll be able to find information on that. And then we had a presentation related to Manhattan Beach and their advanced traffic signals project. And this one is interesting, I think, for anybody here. So this project is all about taking advantage of the South Bay fiber network infrastructure and those connections. And the project is going to connect their traffic signals to the high-speed fiber network, and it will support emerging traffic management technologies and data sharing. The presentation was really cool, actually. So if you have time, just go to YouTube and watch the Transportation Committee and fast forward a little bit to that, because I think it's something you might all want to think about or talk about in your cities. Because if we're all doing that in conjunction with each other, then we can really, truly have true corridor signal synchronization.
Can I add one sentence on that?
What's that?
Can I add one sentence on that, Christian?
Of course you can.
There's another piece to that, and that is, how do we get the data on how fast the speeds are going? Not just the signal synchronization in response to real-time traffic, but how do you get the traffic information? And apparently, the new cars that are coming out are now equipped with technology that connects them to each other and to the infrastructure. And so with this connected vehicle technology, we can find out where they're actually going and what lane they're in and how fast they're moving. And we can adjust in real time then the signal synchronization system. That means that in real time, you need the fiber optic network to communicate between the signals. It's not going to be sufficient now to just have hardwired connections and signal synchronization plans. If you want to do it in real time, you're going to have the data available from these connected vehicles, and you're going to be able to use that data to actually adjust your corridors and manage your speeds. So we've been talking to the public works directors and the IT guys in the cities to try and put those two pieces together. Where are they, how are they moving, and how can we control our signals to make them flow freely?
Yeah, and I will just add that, you know, there's a lot more going on here. And DKS, who is working with Manhattan Beach, did a presentation for Transportation Committee last month as well, which is well worth watching. And using this technology that Steve was just addressing, it really, I don't know how into the weeds you guys get with your traffic engineers and when people are complaining about speeds, but they were really able to dial in using this type of data into what is really happening on the roads, you know, not just what you hear from residents. So it was super fascinating for anybody who kind of geeks out on that stuff. And that's all I got.
Sorry, I was a geek.
Thanks, Christian. Okay, we're on to Homeless Services, I believe. Jackie?
Okay, I'd like to call on Ronson. For those of you that weren't at, I don't know if, I think Ronson was at our last meeting, but Ronson is our new Homeless Services Manager, and he's doing a fantastic job. And one of the first things he had to do, it's sort of baptism by fire, was to take over $3.5 million worth of projects and reduce them to the amount of money we actually have, which is 1.9 million approximately, and which we have for you today on pages 52 to 55 are the recommendations. But I'll turn it over to Ronson for him to tell you about what we've done.
Thanks, Jackie. And just to be clear, it wasn't just me. I had a great support group, including Jackie, and a great team to vet these projects. I'll go ahead and share my screen. Yeah, can everyone see this? Okay, so like Jackie mentioned, we had $3.5 million. I'll just give the executive summary version of this. And so we had a review panel made up with Jackie, myself, Lori Jacobs, Nancy Wilcox from the chair of the South Bay Coalition on Homelessness. And we also had a support group of Caitlin Sims, who works with the San Gabriel Valley COG to provide feedback. Additionally, we met with every city to review their proposals. And we came up with a recommendation to allocate $1.9 million of it. We estimate that this will house roughly 135 to 165 of our homeless neighbors, which is a return on investment that is actually better than what we see out of LAHSA, so that's good. And so just to give a brief summary on each of these projects that we're recommending, the Torrance Interim Shelter Project is a 40 to 45 unit, kind of like the pallet shelter in Redondo Beach. And it's a project that will house about 45 people. We're supplying some of the construction costs for the individual pallets, as well as the site prep costs. And then this will also include 2 outreach workers that will be trying to funnel people into these beds. So that is that project. Hawthorne is going to be partnering with LA CADA, which is a service organization. They specialize in intensive case management, providing mental health care. They actually have beds that they can offer folks, and also substance abuse mediation type of work. So we will be funding that project as well. We also are recommending an expansion of the homeless court to Hermosa Beach, as well as part of this funding 5 SRO beds that can be used by the beach cities to help get people in a place where they can do their restorative justice. So really excited about that. We are offering 2 dedicated case managers to the beach cities to have further accountability to the beach cities and getting our beach cities homeless housed. Inglewood is requesting a dedicated homeless service coordinator. and Gardena is looking to do a homeless plan for their city. And as a result of that plan, they anticipate seeking a service coordinator. So we're recommending funding for that. Palos Verdes is also planning on doing a homeless plan. And we are advocating for more funding for HomeShare South Bay, which has struggled to kind of get some traction through the pandemic. But we believe that now that we're coming out of the pandemic, we can really capture some mind share about home share and get more homeowners signed up for that. We have some holdbacks because we have some projects in development that we're looking to potentially fund. So more on that later, but and then the rest will be administrative expenses for the COG. So all total $1.9 million. And I believe the next step for this, if the board approves, is then I can then take this and negotiate with the county for an SOW that we plan on executing around December timeframe. We're targeting maybe the December board meeting to get that contract in front of you all for execution. So that's the plan.
Great. So we're asking for any questions, then a motion to approve the recommendation.
Okay. Any questions from my colleagues?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Thank you, Cedric and Christian with the second. Great, David?
Any opposition? Any abstention? Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Ronson. Thank you, Lori. Thank you, Jackie. Thank you, everybody that was involved in that. Great.
Thank you. And next is Christian to talk about the Blue Ribbon Commission.
Yes, Christian.
Yeah, and let me just, Ronson said we may be voting on that in December, but just a reminder to everybody, I think steering committee is the technical board meeting in December. So if you want to be a part of that, be at that meeting. So the Blue Ribbon Commission, I'm now co-chairing now with Sarah Dussault, who is a current member of the LASA committee or commission. And we are about 6 meetings in, I think. We are getting an enormous amount of information. It's like drinking from a fire hose right now. And the end result of this come February or March, when we wind it down, is to ideally present a better plan to the county supervisors about what to do with LASA. How well is it functioning? We are kind of touching a little bit on Measure H, although that's not really our domain. Our main domain is to look at the governance structure of LASA and try to make input that is actionable. There's been 3 other studies done that nothing has come of. So there's a lot to swallow here and try to suss through. But what I will say is that there are 3 members of this commission that are kind of there to represent cities and the COG. So myself, a member of the San Gabriel Valley COG, and then we also have the executive director of Contract Cities. So between the 3 of us, your voices are being expressed quite often. And I would just recommend anybody who has thoughts, concerns, whatever, please feel free to communicate to Ronson and myself. And we kind of have a roundtable with the other COGs every other week as well. And we're really just trying to collaborate and come up with best practices moving forward to improve both funding sources and issues that we are all facing as it relates to homelessness. And I'll just keep it at that for now.
Thank you, Christian. I don't see any questions. Okay. Good work on that. All right, strategic plan and work program for 2021-2022. Jackie?
Right, on our agenda, pages 56 to 60, I can't read my own writing. 56 to 60 is the strategic plan, which we have been working on. A group of people met and had facilitated discussion, and then we came up with some key issue areas, which were then vetted in focus groups. And then we put them into this document, and the steering committee discussed the document. And it will, we're asking you to review it and approve it as a basis for the work program for the rest of the fiscal year. So I guess at this point, I'd just like to answer any questions unless you want me to go into more detail.
No, I think questions are fine. I know it was in the agenda packet. Any questions or comments? Okay, I'll entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
Thanks, Christian.
Second.
Thanks, Stacy. Okay, Dave, please.
Any opposition? Any abstentions? Okay, thank you.
Excellent. All right, Jackie, website.
Wonderful. Well, we have a brand new website. I don't know if I'm echoing here. And we're pretty proud of it. We think it works rather well. And it's going to be real easy for you to find things on it. But we thought we would start by having Colleen give you a little bit of a tour. So Colleen, can you do that?
Yes. Let me just share my screen here. Can you all see the website?
Yes. Who's that guy?
That guy needs a shave.
Thank you, Jackie. So yes, I'm proud to present our new and improved website, and a lot of thought and consideration went into making it as user-friendly as possible for our member cities. So I just wanted to walk through some of the key features of the website to give you an overview and encourage you to check it out when you have a chance, if you haven't already. So when you go to this is the homepage, and of course we have this rotating carousel, and we were able to incorporate video into it, which we're really excited about. And if you go to our About section, you can learn more about us if you just click on that. And of course you can watch the short video by our board chair, Drew. And then also if you go to the member cities area, you can learn more about all of our member cities by just clicking on logos here, and they take you to the city's website. And then we have the committees and agendas area on the menu bar at the top. And if you go there, you can have access to learn about all of our meetings, including the board meeting, and access to the agendas. Then you go to our program section. It features all of our programs and quick access to all of them. And I'll just show you this one, the Environmental Services Center. This is sort of a model of all of the other program pages. And it features all of our sub-programs for the Environmental Services Center. And then if you go here, you can also see some news that we aggregate from our newsletters, our Environmental Services newsletters. And then we also have the newsletters here. You can view those. And then you can find out about upcoming events and workshops. And then we feature all of our partners. It's a great way to showcase all the partners we have for the Environmental Services Center. A new feature for the website is the Media Center. And if you can go to Find Us in the Press and see articles that have recently been featured about us in the news. And you can also, if you go to the landing page for the Media Center, you can see our newsletters, also sign up to receive the newsletter. We have recent articles, which also feed into the home page. And then we have some videos, we have news releases, and we have a new feature, which is media kits. So we're going to try to incorporate these for programs where it's appropriate. We have this home share media kit, and it provides you with content that you can share to your constituents. We have this newsletter ready article here that you can just cut and paste into a newsletter, along with photos that you can download. And then we have these social shareables for Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter that are formatted to size, along with suggested post copy and flyers and logos. So check back here frequently to see updates about our various programs and shareable information. And we also have our opportunities page, which has employment opportunities and RFPs. We'll tell you how to volunteer for our organization. Then we have our calendar, which features all of our events. And in our updates section, we have updates that come from our newsletters, and also updates from our various cities. And again, these populate the homepage. And if you go to the homepage itself, let's just take a quick look at that. We have buttons to some of these sections that I just highlighted. And we have the meetings and events, news and updates. And then we have our programs here again. We have a map that's clickable, and you just click on the various city, it takes you to the city website, and also our member agencies, which again, you can click through the logos. So going back to the home page, you can go to we also have a social media feed down at the bottom, a Twitter feed, and we encourage you to all follow us, like our content, and share it on social media. And we're open to feedback about the website. If you'd like to share that, we're always looking to improve it, and we're really excited about it. So again, please check.
Colleen, can you do one thing for me? I just wanted to show you, go to committees.
Okay.
Go to board of directors, and go to tonight's meeting. And it's that easy, and off to the side, you're going to see all the attachments. So if you ever can't find that email that Natalie sends to you, it's all within 2 or 3 clicks that you can get the entire agenda. Same for steering committee or any of our other meetings. Thank you, Colleen.
Thank you.
Yeah. So.
Great work. Thank you both.
Yeah, we're
huge improvement.
Yeah, we hope you'll use it, and we're going to be doing more videos. So if you have ideas and kits that you want to use, Colleen is very, very adept at getting these things done. So we're delighted. Thank you.
All right.
Jackie, was JP Marketing pretty good at working with you to stay in budget, or did you end up having to go over with corrections and changes?
As far as I know, we stayed. Kim, do you want to answer that? We stayed in budget as far as I know.
Yeah, we stayed in budget.
Yeah, we would have let you know if we weren't. No, yeah, they were fine to work with. Okay, should we go on?
Yes, please.
Okay, next is the South Bay Fiber Network. And I just have a very brief oral report there. We're working, fiber, first of all, I want to say that there's an awful lot going on in LA County, and there's groups, LA EDC, Economic Development Corporation, has something called LA Deal, and they've got a lot of different committees, and we're attending those committees. At one of the committees, our consultant, Magellan, made the statement that there's at least 7 projects in the LA area that are really going to school on our South Bay Fiber Network. We are a model and a role model, and I think you should all be really proud of that. However, we're learning that there's an awful lot that's changing in the industry as well. You know, we've all learned a lot from COVID, and so has the industry. So what we're doing is we have a committee of Aaron Baum and Wally and I, and Steve joins us when he can, and David, and we meet with our Magellan advisors, and we've been meeting with other third parties that are possibly going to be using our network to connect to businesses and residents. How can we do that in the most effective way? How can we leverage what we've got and work with cities? So we're going to probably be taking some more time to do some things like a market study, so we understand what some of the demand is out there, who needs this and how they need it. And then we're going to come back to you probably for some more groundwork that we want to lay before we start negotiating with third parties to actually extend our network. We're excited about it. We think we're keeping up with the times, and hopefully we'll keep your cities and your residents and businesses getting reliable and affordable service that they might not be getting today. So that's our report for the South Bay Fiber Network. Next is the Environmental Services Center, and I want Kim to give the report on that, just a little update.
Hi, good evening to everybody. I'm going to give you an update on 2 of the programs that we're working on with the Environmental Services Center. The first is the SoCal REN, which is our energy efficiency work. And we've been working with this program called Kits for Kids. Actually, Lori has been doing a lot of work on this, who's on the line tonight. We're super excited to tell you that, so it's curriculum for 4th graders. And we have 2 classrooms that are getting ready to actually receive their kits. That's in the city of Carson, and it's Town Avenue Elementary School. We're very excited about that. They also will receive a $1,000 grant, each classroom, to support the classroom activities. So that's very, very exciting. I'm also very pleased to announce that the city of El Segundo is the 200th enrollee of the SoCal-REN program. And so this program is for cities and agencies like water districts and school districts. And the city of El Segundo actually made the 200 mark. And so we're going to be doing a lot of promotion and publicity around that. And so we're very excited about that. And that's to give cities energy efficiency tools and resources, financial, working on incentives, implementation, audits, all kinds of things that are available to cities. So that's exciting. And speaking of those services, the city of Redondo Beach just received their audit findings. So they had several buildings that were actually audited by the SoCal-REN team. They have energy engineers. They have several energy engineers that the cities can tap into. And the library was done, City Hall was done, police department, and performing arts center. And a list of potential measures was given to the cities. It included like HVAC, upgrades, plumbing retrofits, lighting, chiller replacements, ventilation. So all kinds of different opportunities for the city. It depends on what the city wants to move forward with. Obviously, there's a cost associated with doing equipment replacement, but they could save potentially up to over 981,000 kilowatt hours a year, and another almost like 14,500 burn savings for gas, which is always hard to get gas savings. So that's really exciting. And then another piece of this is that working with the SoCal-REN, they are looking at piloting an opportunity for some of these cities. So we have smaller cities that don't have as much energy efficiency opportunity. And so for those cities, it'd be a service packet that might include behavioral change. And we can do things like working with the employees at the city, giving them lunch and learns, having little contests that they go home and actually do energy efficiency in their home. And so we're looking at options to implement that. And that's another thing that will happen over like probably the next 6 to 12 months into the next year. Then for water savings, everybody's talking about the drought. And so we're working with West Basin to get kits out to households where we have 500 kits that we can get out to the entire South Bay to help reduce water use. And the kits include things like faucet aerators, shower controls, like plumber's tape, information about how they can save water. And so we're working on that. We might be doing some, bringing them out to events in your city. So if you've got an event that you would like to let us know about, we can take these kits out there. We're going to be doing it probably with the rain barrels. We've got rain barrel events coming up in January and February. And so we'll be taking them out as well. And we can also partner at maybe some of your community centers. We can do maybe a special water reduction event, and we can have staff come out there and have people sign up and get these kits. So that's really exciting also. We have one last thing is that West Basin is also still doing their $500 clothes washer, high efficiency clothes washer rebate. And it's up to 500. You have to qualify. You have to buy the right washer, and they have a list, and you have to sign up online. But this is available now to the entire South Bay community. So for all your residents, they need to replace their washer. This is a good time to do it. So I think that's all I have for tonight. If there's any questions.
Thanks, Kim.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, so we got legislative committee, and I know we've got Stacy on, the chair. Stacy, you want to talk legislative committee, please?
Sure, thank you. Just a quick update here at our October 7th legislative committee meeting. There was no quorum. So if you're a legislative committee member, please show up to our next meeting so that we can have quorum and get all sorts of fun business done. We did proceed with the meeting on informational items. We had a discussion on the South Bay COG's draft 2022 policy platform. It will be presented at our next meeting for discussion, edits, and hopefully approval. We had a discussion on the potential legislative proposals. The item will be discussed again at our next meeting. The goal will be to meet with our legislators to request sponsorship prior to the LA County Legislative Delegation Policy Retreat on December 2nd. The next meeting will take place on Thursday, November 4th. That's next week. Please come one, come all. We also have an update from our October 14th legislative briefing. Over 60 participants were in attendance. We had 7 legislators participate. On the federal side, we had Congress members Liu and Waters. And on the state side, we had Senators Ben Allen, Sidney Kamlager, Stephen Bradford, and then Assembly members Marisucci and Burke. And we tried to bridge a new format where we inserted some Q&A, which it seemed to be an improvement, but I'm definitely open to any and all feedback on how we can continue to improve these briefings. I think that concludes my report.
Hey, Stacey, you did a great job facilitating that legislative breakfast or meeting.
Yeah, if I can just add something about that, I think the meetings have been changed. The legislative committee meetings have been changed to 5 o'clock on the first Thursday. And it is, the next meeting is super important. I want to reiterate what Stacey said, because we have some ideas for legislation. Actually, we have some needs that we're going to need an author for something like the local travel network legislation. And so we're going to be discussing that at the November 4th meeting. And then, as we learned at the briefing, they do meet on December 2nd. And so we're going to want to really start setting up dates with legislators. So if you're interested in legislation at all, we need you there at 5 o'clock on November 4th to create a quorum so we can move forward with these items. And thank you. And I, I would welcome feedback on the briefing too, but I thought Stacey did a great job as well.
Okay. And then we have senior services. Ronson.
Britt or Ronson? Britt, you want to start?
Okay, thank you. Our October meeting was on October 5th, and we had 2 very interesting topics. The first was discussion of the ADU legislation, accessory dwelling units. And we had John Pacheco Bell from who is our regional planner, and Douglas Look from the Project Calm, and Jeannie McNaughton from my city planning department. She's our planning manager. And initially, of course, so many of us were not wild about the ADU legislation, but now that it's passed, we did want to facilitate getting this kind of information out to seniors in our communities, because we think this is one of the demographic groups that could really benefit in terms of affordable housing for them and being in a situation where they could live with extended family, as we're seeing more and more couples, both people in the couple working, and having an extended family living together can really be very beneficial. So Jeannie gave us an overview of the new legislation and the history of the whole ADU issue. And particularly interesting, our city is using SB2 grant money to develop an ADU program to help our residents to be able to participate in this more readily. We're actually developing architectural plans, 4 different plans for them. And so we thought it was a good model for other cities to know about. And the video from that presentation was put on our website. I think it's still up there if you're interested. And so in fact, Ronson might even just send out that link again. I don't know that the city council people were included. I know you sent it out before, and that was very helpful to people. We also had a speaker from West Side Pacific Village, which is one of the first village projects that was started here in Southern California, and they were very helpful in helping start the two villages that we have in our area here. We have the South Bay Village, which oversees Torrance and the beach cities, and then the PV Village, which is very, very active. And so that was very interesting to get an update on that. In fact, speaking of villages, I did want to mention the upcoming forum, annual forum that the PV Village is having. And here again, maybe Bronson would send you out a copy of the link for this, which is coming up on November 10th. It's the annual Upside of Aging. And we have the author of This Chair Rocks, a manifesto against ageism. And it's going to be a very interesting presentation, kind of an overview of how the stigma of aging and working to overcome that. So hope you'll have a chance to participate in that. And then our next meeting will be December 7th. And maybe Bronson may have a little bit of an update on some of the things we're thinking about for that meeting.
Yeah, we had a new member also that had some great ideas. Her name was Monique Sujimoto from the Palos Verdes Library District. And you know, bringing the libraries into this conversation sounds like a great idea to talk about. One thing she mentioned was digital literacy, and a thought came to our head about, you know, the fiber network and maybe how that could be a part of what they're doing at the library. So just trying to suss that out in a future meeting was a topic of interest.
Good, thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for ushering me through the first working group meeting.
Definitely.
Thank you both. Okay,
thanks.
We're on to SPA 8, working group. I think that's Hildy and Stacy, right?
Yeah, I'm happy to speak for us unless Hildy, you have anything to add, but I don't think we have any updates.
There's a meeting November 4th, right? In the morning.
We were successful in, yes, putting a meeting on the calendar.
Right. So
not easy. So we didn't have any meetings in October, and we will come back to you after our meeting on November 4th.
Okay. Great.
Okay.
Well,
I have two other things I wanted to talk about. One is Britt mentioned our regional planner, Jonathan Pacheco Bell. He's the person that we are paying with your assessment money. And one of his first assignments has been to go to speak to every community development director, except for the city of Lawndale that is not paying the assessment. And he met with all of them, and he came up with an 8-page report on what they would like him to be doing. And there were a lot of similarities. They want him to be looking at legislation and how it affects the South Bay. They wanted him to do some templates and other kinds of things that could be helpful. We had a meeting last week with the community development directors. I received actually some private emails about how much they like him. So it was really great. He's just being extremely well received. And he really got the pulse of what the community development directors want. He's also working on the SCAG projects that we're getting money for. And the community development directors asked for him to possibly, we're looking at this, review your housing elements to look for common themes so we can work on common projects. So he's really got the ear of your development directors. It's been going really well, and I wanted to give you that update. Another really well thing, I've got only good news tonight, is our local travel network. We have been giving presentations on the local travel network to several city councils and to several elected officials. And we started a while ago at the Hawthorne City Council, where the Hawthorne Council endorsed us moving forward with the staff to look at, Aaron Baum has actually ridden his bicycle on the entire local travel network, but we know that cities have a better idea of some of the streets than we do. So we're meeting with staff, and they have set up meetings with Hawthorne so we can get started. I guess I should back up a second. We want to do the entire South Bay, obviously, but we need to start with something that we can bite off and chew. And so we've identified 2 corridors that we'd like to start off with. One is the Beach Cities corridor, and the other is Hawthorne, Gardena, and Lawndale. So Hawthorne was on board, and this week I met with the Gardena City Council, and I think Rodney might still be here. The City Council also received it very well, so which is really great. We're going to start working with the staff in Gardena, and if you've got Hawthorne, Gardena, and Lawndale, you've got a corridor there that's a really pretty good one, and we're going to be meeting now with Lawndale to see if we can bring them in. Our meetings have been on the beach cities have been with elected officials, and we met with the city managers of or staff of a couple of cities. Those meetings are going well as well. Also, we have a problem in El Segundo because El Segundo is landlocked, but I'd still think it would be great if we could have an intra El Segundo network while we're figuring out how to get out of El Segundo. One of the things we're doing now is we're going to be starting a signage project, which is the design of signs. This was really important to Gardena because they're designing signs, so they want to make sure our signs coordinate and are not the same, but are not, whatever. So we're just starting the signage project now, and we're going to be working with your city staff on that. One really, and I want to mention that implementation of all of this, which are basically signs and lines on the road, are Measure M fundable. So we're going to be identifying Measure M projects that we can get the money to actually implement this. One of the factoids that we have in our presentation when we make this to the councils, which I want to share with all of you, is if you are great soldiers and you build all of the RENA requirements that you're supposed to be building in the South Bay, that's 30,000 new homes, and that's 50,000 new cars that we anticipate that would come from those homes. And if we don't use something like the local travel network to get our streets less clogged with major streets for local trips, which can be done on other streets. What did we estimate? We estimated 80% of the trips are happening today on 20% of the streets. We really need to do this to address the future. So I hope that we can, we'll be moving into more cities. We'll be identifying signage. We'll be bringing this back to you at frequent intervals. And we're really excited about the way it's been going. So thank you very much. That completes my other.
Excellent. Good others. Thank you. All right. There's nothing really to add to the agency reports, I don't think, unless someone feels like there was something omitted. No, doesn't look like it. Okay.
I do have one announcement, and I sent it out to all of you yesterday. There's several cities are getting very involved in LA versus Hate United against Hate Week. It's November 14th through 20th. And the cities that I've heard of so far are Torrance, RPV, Manhattan Beach, Hermosa Beach, and I don't know, I think Carson might be doing it as well. But if you are, please send me that you're going to be part of LA versus Hate, because I keep getting asked which cities are involved. Thank you,
Jackie, for that. Yeah, we are, and I'm actually on the planning committee for that. So.
Great, great.
Okay. Any other announcements from any of the members of the board? Yeah, B, please.
Just wanted to let everybody know that the league is having their all cities holiday reception on Thursday, December 9th from 6 to 8:30 p.m. And I'm not sure where it's going to be held at. It's going to be in person, but I wanted you to calendar it. And the league division did send a legislative recap letter on several bills of interest, including SB 9, and they actually thanked the representatives who voted against SB 9 and listed them by name, which included, of course, our own assembly member, and then listed those at least abstained, which included our senator. And then they listed the 18 legislators they were displeased with who voted in favor of SB 9. So I thought that was good. I just wanted to let everybody know that they're on the record. And so it was 18 that voted in favor. These are all the LA County legislators, by the way, not everybody in the state. I just wanted to let you know.
I think the reception is at the California Club again this year.
Okay, I wasn't sure because
I thought I read that.
Okay, yeah, you're probably right. I mean, the blurb they had on it was just yesterday, so there's no time to give a report. We just had the meeting yesterday.
It is, I believe, at the California Club, and it's in partnership also with independent cities and contract cities. So it'll be all.
Oh, good. Okay.
Organizations. Should be
Thank you for that. It's usually downtown, so that's good.
Okay, thanks, B. Thanks for sharing that. Any other announcements?
Our next meeting is November 18th. It's only in 3 weeks because we want you to have a nice Thanksgiving with your families. And so please remember to come on November 18th.
Great. Is there, while we have a few more minutes, we're ahead of schedule. Is there anyone here that can commit to the legislative committee meeting so that Stacy's certain to get a quorum? This was light last time, as she already mentioned. B, great, thank you. It's what Stacy said was November 4th?
Yeah, November 4th at 5 p.m.
5 p.m.
5 p.m. So B's raising her hand. Anyone else that can commit to that?
Stacy, I'm sorry I missed your last meeting, but I will attend.
No worries. Thank you.
Yeah.
Excellent. Okay.
We need 4 people to make a quorum.
We need 4. Christian, up for another one.
Yes.
Always giving. Thank you, sir.
I'll try to make it if I can.
Thank you, Brett. Okay. Thank you. Okay, everybody.
I'll just say, I'm just going to be sending out the agenda packet either later today or tomorrow for that meeting. So
And it will go to everybody. The agenda will go to everybody, right?
I think I'm 4-0 in terms of getting out early. Just want everyone to know for the record.
Good job.
Guys, have a great night.
It's a record.
Bye.
Good night. See you later.
All right. We'll have to fashion an award for that, apparently. All right. Bye.
Bye.